You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Dan, this can't be everyone's gimmick.
This is our new style of cold open. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Today we are going to be giving you some gift ideas. That's right, it's time for, it's the holiday season. Tomorrow's December 1st, and we're going to give you some ideas of graphic novels that would be good gifts. Some for people who don't normally read comics, and some for who may have recently been into some TV shows and whatnot that still don't read comics. But I'm not doing this alone. I'm going to be joined by producer Kyle.
That's me.
Hello, producer Kyle.
I just have to remind people that being as tomorrow is December 1st, Whamageddon starts tomorrow. The rules of Whamageddon are as follows. If you hear Last Christmas by Wham, you're out. If you think about Last Christmas by Wham, you're out. If you think Last Christmas by Wham is a good song, you're out. Of course, covers and karaoke versions don't count, even though if you play on hard mode, they do. And final rule is if you hear Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, you get a second life. That's a house rule here on The Experience. Because if a place is playing Christmas music and also Rick rolls you at the same time, you deserve a second life.
I now want to hear Last Christmas by Five Finger Death Punch.
See, that would be considered a cover and would be legal.
Right.
And would also be 70 bajillion times better than the original.
Oh, yeah. Because I can see him going full guttural. Last Christmas. Okay, you my heart.
By the way, shout out to Five Finger Death Punch being one of the greatest metal bands going right now. And still being some of the nicest, kindest metal artists ever. Like stopping the pit to make sure people are okay. And like not letting guys be assholes in the crowd. And like fighting bad guys in the audience. Yes.
JD may need a day off.
Yeah, JD, be careful what you're commenting because it counts against my Facebook strikes. We had a thing, it happened not that long ago, and then it had happened before where JD's commenting something as a joke, Facebook thinks it's real, and sends me a problem, like an alert, going, hey, you violated our terms of service. I'm like,
Hey, we do have one bit of news we should probably throw out there before we get started. Well, two. For those who haven't heard, singer Christy McVie from Fleetwood Mac passed away after a short illness. Fleetwood Mac is just an awesome band that I have never understood how they ever stayed together.
Pain.
I mean, there was so much infighting and just bad blood, and I mean, they were bad blood before Taylor Swift was even born, and but she passed away today, and condolences to her family, friends, and fans. And then the other bit of news we have.
Did Dan freeze or did I?
Who?
You froze there.
Oh.
Not you, Dan. I mean
JD.
Him.
Did Dan freeze or did I?
Can you not hear me?
Okay, now it seems like we're all back.
Yeah,
there we go.
You froze.
Okay.
Yeah. And then our other bit of news has to do with Warner Brothers. In an odd move, they're close to striking a deal, an animation deal with Amazon for DC branded content. So some of the stuff is going to be on HBO Max and others will be on Amazon. And I don't get it. Why are they putting Batman animated stuff or animated stuff on another network? It just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that question. But there's another piece of news, Dan, that is relevant to you and I that maybe we should cover.
What's that?
Marvel Snap update brings major nerfs to Angela, Mysterio, and Onslaught.
Okay, the Angela and Mysterio ones are simply taking one power point down each. And the Onslaught one is only relevant if you play with Wong and there are some characters like Gambit or Ironheart and cause these infinite loops. I was seeing some of those online where they would do these things where they'd be on,
my fifth deck is now nerfed. My fifth deck is now trash.
Let's see. Ed says, like you said last week, Dan, there's just too many streaming services, and we're gonna have stuff spread all over the place. Eventually, somebody's going to come along and pull all the streaming services together into one service, and then we'll pay for it, and it'll just be cable again.
Did you see the other James Gunn news? The other James Gunn thing? He put out a tweet and he put it on Hive too. It just said making plans, and it's the Alex Ross Superman standing over the table, which leads everyone to think that Kingdom Come is going to be a thing. Which
I think he's trolling now.
Huh?
I think he's just trolling now.
So do I, but I really, really want Kingdom Come to be a thing in the DC universe.
Yeah. JD, I hate to break it to you, I play an Onslaught-based deck. I have an entire deck that's just ongoing cards.
Yeah, I have both an Onslaught and a Destruction Apocalypse deck. And then I have my version of Magic the Gathering's Fairies, which is all 1 and 2 power cards that have power up. And
I got one of those.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I've spent way more time and energy on Marvel Snap than I ever intended to. And it's a problem. Killmonger is good. I also have a really powerful deck that is all white tiger based.
I have a deck that's all 2 power cards. So Killmonger doesn't do anything. I get out a lot of cards. So if you're doing an event where you gotta, play a lot of cards or a lot of 2s and stuff, but it's pretty interesting because Cable, you get somebody's 6th card from the bottom of their deck, or it's kind of a interesting deck. I've won a few hands with it. It's like I shouldn't have won that.
I've been having a lot of luck with I built a deck that is all based on free draws and pre-planned draws. So you start with Quicksilver and you end with America Chavez every time. So you know what you're getting.
Starting and ending, yeah. There's another card that has that ability too, but it's a 2 power that you always get that card too.
Oh, yeah.
Domino. Okay.
JD, do you mean talking about playing elves or talking about Magic the Gathering, or is it that I'm still having internet connectivity issues?
I think it's the connectivity issues.
All right, please hold.
Yeah, by the way, if anybody's playing the game, they come across a character named a player named Denick, that's me. So I've beaten a few people. My nephew's playing as well. I think I came across him the other day. So it's a pretty fun game, though. I'm having a lot of fun with Marvel Snap. All right. Wait, well, looks like we have Kyle back.
Yeah, I'm back. I switched Wi-Fi networks.
So what's your screen name on Snap?
It is Conversion Box.
Conversion Box. I'm Denick. So what about JD? What's your name?
I'm sure JD is Void Weller.
But I always play at like 2, 3 in the morning my time. Void Weller. Okay. Yeah, I'm Denick everywhere.
I usually play during the Dan Wickline show and other times when I'm here and I'm waiting for a commercial break.
Yeah. Denick's a character name I used for a book that I've just been using for my video games ever since. I was sitting at a Carl's Jr. and trying to come up with a name, and there was a Denny's across the street, and next thing you know, it was Denick.
Couldn't have gone with Carl Denis.
No. Though it was funny, I've been using the name Denick for a long time now, and then I got cast on Dexter, and my character's name was Denny. So, all right, guys, let's talk graphic novels. Good gifts for people. You want to go first, or you want me to?
You should go first, only because, and this is something that like it's definitely a thing that we need to kind of frame up, right? Like we're talking about graphic novels in terms of gift giving.
Yes.
So everybody has their graphic novel, or everybody who's a pro or been doing this for a while has their graphic novels that they recommend for gifts. And so those may change based on who the gift is for and some context like that. So I would be interested to see kind of where you start so that I can frame my gifts.
Well, I will tell you that unlike a lot of people, I have no Neil Gaiman on my list. I do have one Alan Moore, but it's not one that most people go to. So, because I'm thinking about, giving things to people who don't normally read comics, kind of a gateway drug. And I'm going to start with, and I mentioned this before, but I've seen a lot of people who are voracious readers, but they read prose. They read novels and short stories, and they never jump into comics. And while there are a lot of authors, very prolific prose writers like Brandon Sanderson, stuff like that, and can't think of the other guy's name who does Red Rising. Pierce Brown, guys like that. They do great novels, but there's no reason. They tie together, but they don't do a real good reason. Jim Butcher has been working with Dynamite to do comics. He plots them out himself. He co-writes them with Mark Powers. They have various artists in his Dresden Files world. And Dresden Files, if you're not familiar with it, is probably the #1 urban fantasy novel series out there about Harry Dresden, a Chicago-based wizard who you can hire from the phone book. Yes, it started when phone books were still a thing. And he's like 17, 18 novels deep. But the comics are, the first 2 sets of comics they did were Stormfront and Full Moon, which adapted the novels. After that, he started doing original content that not only were part of the continuity, but then he started referencing in his novels. So if you know somebody who is a Dresden File fan, but they don't read comics, they need these, because there are things. I know some people who are huge Dresden fans, and they always talk about the characters very tall. But the only time his height has actually been given was in the comics, and he's 6'9". So that's something you only know in the comics. There's other references, events that then play out later on. So I recommend the Dresden File Omnibus, which has Stormfront and Full Moon, So they get to see adaptations of the first two novels, but then 100 pages of additional story that's set within continuity. So that's the one I start with.
I'm going to need to get an energy drink at the break.
Okay.
I am going to start with the thing that you would least likely expect me to start with. Superman Red Sun.
Okay.
I am in every aspect of my life, a purveyor, a conveyor, a cheerleader for the independent, small press, sort of out there comic book.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're going to hand a comic book to somebody who's not a comic book fan and be like, this, I think you would enjoy this story. I think you would enjoy this thing. It's enough things that are not comic book centric that they'll be able to understand, but still comic booky. So it's Mark Millar and Dave Johnson. Superman Red Sun is this idea. It's an Elseworlds miniseries where Superman comes to Earth, and instead of landing in Kansas, he essentially lands in Soviet Russia. In Soviet Russia, Superman's you. This kind of story about how the things Superman stand for is universal, regardless of the place you're brought up in. The Cold War and being on that side of the Steel Curtain doesn't change who Superman is. The morals and the things that he believes in are the same. And what's great about it is that it is an Elseworld story. So when people are like, this is not the Superman I know, you can be like, right, it's not. But it's a character you know in a political situation you probably have heard of or remember, or if nothing else, if you're a hockey fan or familiar with. And you can put it all together into one book that's not, it's a 3-issue series originally. It's not like I'm asking you to read 600 pages. Right? You're under 100 pages in a trade paperback. It's a quick and easy read. And to me, it's like this. I don't have to worry about pissing you off. I don't have to worry about offending anyone. I don't have to worry about any of the things I have to worry about with any of my other selections with this book.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Let's see. Which one should I go to next?
Do you want me to go twice and then you go?
No, I've got, we said 5 and I've got like 7 or 8.
Well, I have a list of 10 in case you take some of mine.
Okay. I'm going to go, since you went Superman Red Sun, Elseworld.
I didn't know if you wanted a serpentine.
I'm going to go I'm going to go main universe, my favorite Batman story. And this is idea for anybody who likes the Batman that just came out, or fans of the old Batman animated series, the Batman 66 TV show. It's classic Batman, but done as a murder mystery, or as a mystery with all of his big villains and stuff. This is Batman Hush by Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee. It is my favorite Batman story, one of my favorite graphic novels, period, or storylines. I bought it when they were in the comics, and every month rushing to the comic shop to pick this up. This is basically all of his villains are being enhanced. This is Joker, Riddler, Ra's al Ghul, Clayface, Superman's in it, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, and this new villain named Hush, who seems to know who Bruce is, or that Batman is Bruce Wayne. It's a very personal story, but it taps into everything that makes Batman cool. It's a good mystery, and it's from Jeff Loeb, who has written some of the seminal Batman stories, like Long Halloween and Dark Victory. This is, though he's working with Jim Lee here instead of Tim Sale, but Jim is also one of my favorite artists. So this is the number one on my list.
That's one of those books that we share. It's probably on both lists. I mean, I had Batman, and then I had Hush, Killing Joke. Like, I had 4 or 5 Batmans, and I think every list needs a Batman, right?
Mhm.
I'm gonna stick in kind of the not my normal, and Superman One More Day. Or not Superman, Spider-Man One More Day. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You talk with J. Michael Straczynski, Joe Quesada, Danny Mickey with Joe Quesada art. It's this 4-part comic book crossover from 2007, 2008, where Spider-Man crosses over with the other Spider-Men that existed at the time. And it's kind of this, how does Spider-Man cope after the death of Aunt May? It's Aunt May has been shot by Kingpin, and he's trying to, figure out what life looks like. And he's married to MJ, and there's all this kind of Spider-Man transitioning from what it is to be a kid to what it is to be an adult. And he's had some of these adult experiences in terms of he's married to MJ. He's seen a little more death. He's been Spider-Man for a minute. But now the safety blanket of Aunt May is gone. And he has to figure out how to, for the first time, be on his own. And so this is one of those books that I routinely buy the trade and give it to kids who are going off to college for the first time. My buddies who are like, hey, I proposed to my girlfriend, and I'll go, well, that was a mistake, but here, read this book. Things like that. That to me, it's kind of one of these stories that helps people bridge parts of their life through the eyes of Spider-Man.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we're doing gift ideas, graphic novel gift ideas for non-comic readers, for people that want to bring them in. So let's do a quick break, and we'll come back with my next selection right after this.
Why was Princess Zelda sad after watching a bunch of YouTube videos? She couldn't find the link in the description. We'll stop if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's super easy. Click subscribe and click the bell when you do. And thanks for supporting the EXP.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey everybody, welcome back. We're doing graphic novel gift ideas for non-comic readers. things that they might connect to and get them to sit down and read a comic. Now, since Kyle just did one from Marvel, I'm going to stick. I have one Marvel on my list as well. And this is for anybody who thinks that Thor Ragnarok is the best Marvel movie. Let's show them what that storyline really should have been with Planet Hulk by Greg Pak and Carlo Pagulayan. This is basically the after a big battle between the Fantastic Four and the Hulk, the Illuminati decides to shoot him into an uninhabited planet in space. So not to deal with him anymore, except turns out they sent him to the wrong planet. There are people, he gets pulled into gladiator games. He ends up on a slave planet, basically. It's the movie Gladiator with the Hulk in it. With the rise up, the whole thing. This is probably one of the best Hulk stories ever done. Greg Pak built his career on this thing, and and then we're seeing remnants of it, the hints of it, but the story itself, Silver Surfer's in it. We meet Scar. It's just a really strong story. I remember getting the big, thick, hardback version of it, sitting down and reading it, and just getting not only just hooked on it. I left it on the dining or the living room table because I knew if I left it long in there enough, my ex-wife my wife at the time would be curious and pick it up, and she ended up reading it cover to cover as well. So it's a great book, and it's, like I said, it's elements that they pulled into Thor Ragnarok, but done even better.
I like that answer, Dan. I really do. So one of the books that I keep on my list all the time isn't going to shock anybody, and I'm just going to glaze over it and go on to the next book on my list, is Sandman. I don't need to sell everyone who watches this show on Sandman. So we'll move on from Sandman and actually go to a book that's on my list at all times for the person who, if you hand them a traditional comic book, they're going to be turned off, but you still want to hand them a comic book, which is Berserk. Not the Keanu Reeves thing, the manga Berserk. It reads like a samurai comic book. It's a giant sword with, a thirst for blood. It's this hero's journey from a character that has this abnormal relationship with death. And to me, it's one of those, it really does show what can be done in a black and white format without this really strong, definitely not for kids. But it's this drama action thing that also has some lighthearted moments that to me just kind of shows, hey, for as much of a low art form as some of the things I recommend are, this is the opposite. This is a super high art form. So I'm going to go with Berserk. I think it's published by Dark Horse Manga.
All right. I think everybody probably has an Alan Moore book on their list, whether it's Watchmen or League of Extraordinary Gentlemen or Saga of Swamp Thing, which Ed mentioned in his. I do have an Alan Moore on mine, but I have a different one because I am a huge Jack the Ripper aficionado, and where Alan Moore took some liberties that go against the facts, he's crafted quite a story in From Hell with Eddie Campbell. Eddie's artwork is gorgeous on the book, but they take it in a very unique direction. They do end up going to the same places with, the killer and stuff, but they combine some characters. They flip-flop ages. Detective Aberline is supposedly much older than Detective Godley, but he has in the movie it's Johnny Depp as Aberline and Robbie Coltrane, who just passed away, as godly, where it's like there's this great CBS miniseries they did years ago, and it was Michael Caine as Aberline, just to show you the proper age setup. But yeah, if you are if you know someone who is a true crime fan or a Jack the Ripper aficionado, it's hard to say Jack the Ripper fan, but a serial killer obsessed person, From Hell is a great book. They made a good movie out of it, but the book is better. And again, there are certain things, certain liberties Alan Moore takes, but he crafts a really entertaining story.
Yeah, I have a true crime book as well, and it really is because like my business partner is a huge true crime nut. I have a lot of friends who are really into those podcasts. So the one I hand out is My Friend Dahmer by Durf Backdurf. Durf, who you may know from Punk Rock and Trailer Parks or Trashed, or some of his other work in comics, grew up friends with Jeffrey Dahmer, like IRL friends. And so he took this 24-page kind of short story he had written about his time as a teenager with Dahmer and turned it into a more long-form graphic novel that was adapted into the film My Friend Dahmer. And what Durf does, and this is, I would say that I would always have a Durf Backdurf book on my list. And I probably could find one of his works for pretty much anybody I buy a gift for. But he takes real things that he's done, in that same way Hunter S. Thompson had gonzo journalism. Durf Backdurf has from his real life stories in his comics. His book Trashed was about his time in college working as a garbage man. Right? He's telling stories that he lived in a very relatable way, sort of in that Harvey P. Cars, Cleveland kind of way, where he's taking his actual experiences and putting them through the lens of a comic book and a slightly odd duck and turning them up. So this is kind of his way of kind of telling the Jeffrey Dahmer story in his own way through his relationship with Jeffrey Dahmer. On the same note, if you're looking for, if somebody's read that one, did you see What Eddie Gein Done, which came out this past year by from Albatross Funny Books by Eric Powell? Would be another book that could swap in with this one.
Sticking with the crime idea, but maybe a little more towards revenge. For me, I think the part of the problem is when you bring in someone trying to get them to read, they don't want capes and tights and big, long story arcs. So for me, one of the perfect books to give somebody is 100 Bullets by Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Risso. Now, the setup for, I love the synopsis for it. It says, 1 gun, 100 bullets, 0 consequences. If your life was destroyed and you knew that those responsible would never be held to account, how far would you go to get revenge? If you were given a chance to kill anyone you wanted with a guarantee that the law could not touch you, would you take it? That's the setup. That's the premise. This guy shows up when you're down, when you have lost someone and people are getting away with murder. Agent Graves shows up, gives you a gun and 100 bullets, and you're not going to get in trouble for it. That is a great character study. It's a great revenge thing. If they're into John Wick or The Ballerina or Atomic Blonde, even James Bond. I mean, it's just street level, good character driven pieces, and they're done in small segments. So, it's more accessible to new readers. So, and I just remember loving every story as it went along.
I have one that's not a comic book that I give to, and this is a weird one because I know it goes against our premise a little bit, Dan. This is one that I give to people who have been around comics a long time. People who are thinking, maybe I want to do this for a living. Maybe I want to be in this business. I've been a fan of this thing, and maybe I want to be in this business.
Oh,
Neil
that's
Gaiman's
where I
The
thought you
View
were
from the
going.
Cheap Seats.
I thought you were going to go Understanding Comics by McLeod.
No. This is the collected nonfiction work of Neil Gaiman. But there's a chapter in here, and it's something that you've heard me reference many times, Dan. There's a chapter in here that is it's page 229 in the book. Good Comics and Tulips a Speech. I recommend this to anyone who thinks they want to be in the comic book business. Read that chapter first and then go back and reread the rest of this book, because this really is a love letter to story. Every story, every nonfiction work in here is a guy who has spent his whole life loving the work of stories. The start of the book is about libraries and the value of libraries and librarians and the people who introduce you to stories, and then people who made stories, and then being a part of the making of stories, and then the only part in here that I would say maybe isn't specifically good for storytelling is there's a whole chapter in here that's the nonfiction stuff he wrote for the liner notes of his ex-wife's CD jackets. That's the only thing I would say.
That reminds me of Stephen King's book on writing, which, if you are a writer and you haven't read that, it is one of the trippiest things I've ever come across, because a big part of it is all about just the amount of drugs he did and how he doesn't remember half the stuff he wrote. And then there's a small part on the process of writing. And then the last part he wrote after getting hit by a van. And it's basically just him full of hate and vitriol going off about the guy that hit him. And I listened to it as an audiobook read by Stephen King. It is one of the most amazing experiences.
Yeah, like by the way, I keep that book right here. Like, that's my personal copy.
Mm-hmm.
I keep it at arm's length all the time because I never know when I'm going to need to reference that book. So that's why that's one that's always on my list.
Sean recommends Divinity from Valiant and God Country, along with, he had recommended some others above. He recommended Marvel Zombies. So next one on my list is any sci-fi fans out there? You want to give them something unique. The thing about science fiction is there has to be a hook, a catch that gets their attention. Now, this happens to be in the DC universe, but there's very little reference to the mainstream DC characters. This is Planet Heist. It's an Adam Strange story written by Andy Diggle and Pasquale Ferry. And the whole premise of it is it's before the big Rann-Thanagar War. And Adam Strange tries to head back to Thanagar to see his wife and his daughter. And the Zeta beam doesn't come. And when he finally finds a way to get there, the planet is gone. It's just debris. And it's him realizing that, yes, there's debris there, but that's not Thanagar. Somebody has stolen the planet. And it is one of the trippiest science fiction heist stories. It involves the Omega Men, which we rarely ever get to see in comics anymore. And it's just a really fun story. And it's neat to see Adam Strange highlighted. And you get the Thanagarians, but you don't get Hawkman. So again, if you look at if you got a sci-fi reader on your list and they want something unique, and they don't want to dive deep into the DC universe, this is over here on the edges. And it's a lot of fun. It's a really good story.
Speaking of on the edges, I want everybody needs some Mike Mignola. And we didn't mention Starman, John. No.
It's a good choice.
It is a strong choice.
Yes.
And when I recommend Mike Mignola in the Mignola verse, I don't want to recommend a Hellboy title. Because it's like biting off the first bite of a massive candy bar. Right? You can read a lot of Hellboy and still have made a very little dent in your Hellboy reading. So I always suggest something like The Amazing Screw-On Head and Other Curious Objects, which are the one-shots from that universe, or any of the BPRD things from the Mignola-verse. I think if you're going to introduce somebody in there into that sort of style of things, try and avoid a Hellboy title if you can. If you need to pick a Hellboy title, do Hellboy in Hell. But try and get them on the fringes of the Hellboy universe and let them work their way in. So I like it. Like I said, I recommend The Amazing Screw-On Head and Other Stories.
All right, let's go ahead and take our second break, and we'll come back. We got a few more books to cover, some more Dark Horse, some got an indie title, and some more DC. So we will be right back after this.
Go follow The Experience on TikTok at @the_EXP1 or scan the QR code on the screen. Our TikTok is like everywhere else we are, except you only have to deal with us for a minute. Seems like a win-win to me.
Comic Collectibles is here for you every Wednesday with AR Comics for two very important reasons: to sell you rare, one-of-a-kind comics that you'll love, and to confuse AR with old man talk. You see, Rex and John are, how should I put this, ancient as the roots of the mountains. So every week, Rex and John fill in AR in yet another area of pop culture that he missed because he's too young, just didn't have the time, or just really doesn't care about. It's a real public service they provide. Come buy some super rare and unique comics, while old men explain long-dead sci-fi shows to a younger man making that confused puppy face. Every Wednesday from 6 to 8 Eastern with Rex, John, and AR Comics. Comic Collectibles on The Experience. Comic culture and sales.
My name is Luciano Vecchio. I am an artist. I work at Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and also my creator on work. And I'm having a great time here at Comic Con.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Stick around. We got a great lineup today. Right after the show, we got Comics Collectibles with Rex and John, and they've got some really good books today. They're giving away a 9.8 slabbed comic. Well, I'm not sure which one they're giving away, but all you have to do is be online and watching the show to enter. No purchase necessary. They have the Death of Superman special #1 that's already gone to second printing. They've got a copy signed by Dan Jurgens. They have a Batman and Robin #1 signed by Frank Quietly. And they've got a Harley Quinn Villain of the Year #1 signed by Mark Russell. So that's some good books. And then after that, we have Pop Go the Writers, which is myself and writer Jim Beard, as we talk about the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special or holiday special and the season finale of Andor. And then we'll follow that up with Wednesday Warriors. So we got a big lineup tonight. I saw a question from Sean saying he was asking about anybody who, or a book for anybody who likes action martial arts type films or is fascinated by ancient Japanese culture. And while I don't have one on my list, I do recommend Matt Fraction and David Aja's The Immortal Iron Fist run, where it gets into the kingdoms of heaven, the different cities of heaven, introduces all the different warriors. It is a really good run and really fun read.
And I had mentioned already Berserk, the manga, which is in that realm, or I would also recommend Kabuki.
Mhm.
The only name I can remember from Kabuki is David Mack, but
He wrote and directed. He wrote and drew.
Yeah. I would recommend that one as well.
Okay. I'm going to throw out there, since you went Dark Horse, I'm going to throw Dark Horse out there too for anybody who's a fan of Sword and Sorcery or the original Conan novels, the Edgar Rice Burroughs stories. A few years back, when Dark Horse had Conan, Kurt Busiek and Carrie Nord did an amazing run adapting the actual ERB stories in just gorgeous looking work. So look back for that. The Dark Horse run on Conan with Kurt Busiek and Carrie Nord. They're just amazingly gorgeous books. And they're, like I said, really good adaptations of the actual Edgar Rice Burroughs stories.
Cosmic Odyssey.
That's,
I don't, John, for me.
Yeah.
It's not one that I think of as a gift. It's one that I think of as, oh, if I know this is something this person will enjoy, I'll pick it up. But it's not one that I would put on like a gift giving guide. And again, so this is where I think Dan and I's methodologies are different in this. For me, for instance, when I talk to people about what they like, I always try and think of authors or writers or artists or creators that would work, and then try and find one of their works that fit the person. So like my next recommendation, it just says Eric Powell. Like, and so now I have to think about, depending on who we're buying for or who we're giving to, what Eric Powell books to get. And so I always recommend one of three, either the original, and they just reprinted it this year from Albatross Funny Books, Big Man Plans, which was kind of this first kind of 2005 or so, that first book hit. And it's Eric telling a mystery story in this really blue collar kind of street level, not quite superhero, but not quite not world that would become the Goon universe. Then along with that, my favorite Goon graphic novel to give is The Goon, Chinatown and the Mystery of Mr. Wicker, which was the first book that was published by Dark Horse when the Goon came to Dark Horse. Another good one in it, because it's a little bit lighter, I guess, in the Goon series, would be Dwight T. Albatross's The Goon Noir, from 2006. So that's my, like, I always recommend Eric Powell for people who like that kind of gritty, punch 'em up, not quite superhero, but not quite not. Rather than give you an anti-hero like the Punisher, I like to give the Goon.
Goon is awesome. I love the Goon. Ed's asked about, for someone who loves horror movies but rolls his eyes at comics. For me, that really comes down to the type of horror movies. If they like serious horror movies, then something that's out right now, which is Something is Killing the Children, I think would probably go over very well. But if they're a little more into the campy type of horror, then I would look into either Cal McDonald by Steve Niles. Actually, most any Steve Niles book is good for horror, whether it's 30 Days a Night, Savage, just down the line, Cal McDonald books. But also, if they're fans of like Sven Gulli and stuff like that, then David Dasmalchian has a book out right now called Count Crawley. I don't remember the full title of it.
Count Crawley's Midnight Mystery Theater.
Yeah, so if they're that type, then that would be
Theater.
excellent pickup. So the next one on my list is this is eclectic. This is if you're looking for somebody who is really open-minded, into a bit of erotica, doesn't mind the LGBTQ, and is okay with nudity. Sunstone by Stepan Sejic is probably one of the best erotic romance novel or series out there. There's a bunch of volumes. His art is fantastic. His writing and his ability to craft relationships is so good. And he does this all on the side while he's doing his other work. This is Top Cow's best-selling books. They only put them out as graphic novels. And this is after he's actually posted all the art for free on DeviantArt. And they still make the most money for the company, you know. So Sunstone, it's a unique book. Like I said, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not for, you know, if somebody, you know, is like, oh my God, nudity. Oh, then Sunstone's not for you. But if they're okay with a little BDSM and some fun stuff like that, Sunstone is an awesome book.
If you're not into nudity and you're not into BDSM and all that kind of stuff, this title is also not for you, but for very different reasons. The last book I have on my list, and I mean, I have some more, but like we'd have to get real kind of into the weeds as to why I would recommend those ones. But Saga. Brian K. Vaughan, and why can't I remember the artist's name all of a sudden? I feel like an idiot. Fiona Staples. Saga is one of those graphic novels that when the original floppies came out, changed the game. It really did kind of redefine what could be done at Image Comics. It really did redefine what could be done in terms of the way content was presented in a trade paperback. And there was no kind of off limits with Saga. So for me, recommending Saga is one of those things that I give to people my own age, people who are sort of disenfranchised with the traditional comic form, people who would otherwise be looking for high art or deconstructionist art or any of these. Look, if you're a hipster, if you have a hipster you need to give a comic book to, you give him freaking Saga, okay? Like, I'm trying to dance around what I'm trying to say here, but you give it to your hipsters. You give it to the people, like I said, who are looking to be cool, but don't know how. And again, it really is one of these books that you give them issue 1 and they're in for the next 100 issues or however many they wound up making of Saga. Like it's that addicting and it's that hooking. And so I recommend any really Brian K. Vaughan. I've got 3 Brian K. Vaughan books here on the list. And Saga being the one that I think is the easiest in terms of accessibility.
All right. I'm going to end with one author, 2 books. They are, it's ironic that he is probably the 2 best works he did in comics happen to be on my 2 favorite characters, Marvel Daredevil and DC Green Arrow. And that's Kevin Smith, who I know he's the dick joke guy and stuff like that. But Daredevil, Guardian Devil, written by Kevin Smith, drawn by Joe Quesada. It's what created Marvel Knights. It's what changed Marvel and Daredevil. I mean, yes, Frank Miller left his mark on the character, but and God bless Frank Miller. But what Kevin Smith did was he basically helped start the movement to get Marvel out of bankruptcy with Paul Miotti and Quesada. Guardian Devil is a great book, and his run on Green Arrow, bringing Green Arrow back from the dead with Phil Hester and Andy Parks, is just a wonderful run as well. So those are, again, two of my favorite stories of two of my favorite characters. So I think those are some pretty good choices there.
And I'm going to recommend my last book is actually a new book out that you might struggle to find just because it's so new. But from Fair Square Comics, it's a trade I just finished called Black Box. The premise of the book is that George Washington is given a music box as a present when the country is founded, and it never plays music. But because of the protocols and things, it just lives in the Oval Office forever. Except that what it's actually doing is it's recording every conversation that's ever happened in the Oval Office ever. And it's fallen into the hands of a tech genius and an audio nerd, and they're beginning to figure out how to get the recordings. And if you think the things we know about what happened in the Oval Office are crazy, the things that we don't know, that the black box knows, are even crazier. And I like it because in this time, and I don't know about everybody else, but I'm in a situation where politically myself and members of my family are diametrically opposed. And it's a good book that can remind everybody that nobody's as squeaky clean as we'd like to think they are. And everybody's got those skeletons in their closet, especially in politics. And at least that's something we can all agree on. So I really like it. And the fact that it's written by immigrants and by an immigrant, published by an immigrant-owned company, and it really has a diverse group of creators telling uniquely American stories is also a very interesting way to go about it.
All right, we're going to wrap that up there. I'm going to bring it back to where I started with the idea that if you're looking for a gift for somebody who is a voracious reader, look and see what they're reading. If they're reading David Weber, look to Top Cow's Tales of Honor, the Honor Harrington stuff. Brandon Sanderson, Jim Butcher, Pierce Brown, so many of these authors. Patricia Briggs was mentioned. So many of these book authors have gotten into comics, so it's a good bridge. So to tie it over. So look into that.
And there really is a comic for everything. And Dan's naming some of these New York Times best-selling authors. If you have a friend who's reading Malcolm Gladwell, there are comics that will scratch that person's itch, right? It doesn't just have to be these fiction authors. There's literally a comic for everything.
Yeah.
You just have to take the time and do some research and ask people like Dan and I who have been around it, kind of, hey, what do you think? I have a person on my list who is absolutely in love with Dave Pilkey, but they're 37, so they maybe shouldn't be reading Dogman. What should they read? We'll find you something.
Yeah. Yep. So what was the Will Eisner book? Talking to God or something like that?
That was one. There was also Will Eisner's New York. There was The Spirit. But Talking to God is, I think, the book you're going for. Yeah.
So, all right, guys, we got to wrap it up there. There was a great conversation. I hope we helped you guys out a bit. Be back tomorrow with, I think we're going to take a deep dive into what Captain America 3 could have been if they didn't do Civil War. So
they shouldn't do Civil War.
We'll talk tomorrow. Stick around for Comics Collectibles. Have a good night, everybody.
Do you remember what it was like when you were a little kid and you got a letter in the mail? Now imagine that letter was filled with information about your favorite shows, pop culture questions, links to things you're going to want to see later, and even sneak peeks at upcoming programming here on The Experience. That's what the EXP mailing list is. Every week, we send you sneak peeks, information, and all of the relevant links for all of the shows you want to see. Sign up now on our website or scan the QR code that's on your screen right now.